I think that was just completely random, which made me quite regret buying the book. Yeah, I don't know. I said I was not gonna cry. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Kat, and today we're talking about the books I read in January. I read 7 books in January and DNF'd 1, which is quite a good score for me. I'm quite happy with my reading month in January. So the year didn't start on the best foot because the first book I picked up is also the one I DNF'd, and it's The Hearing Test by Eliza Barry Callahan. It's the story of a young artist, I believe in New York, who wakes up one morning with a drowning sound in her ear, and she learns that she is experiencing sudden deafness. And so I was quite intrigued by this book. I have a kind of reading interest in learning about sensory losses, and so the topic of this book was really intriguing to me. I was quite keen to pick it up and read about this character's experience. Unfortunately, I felt like the hearing loss was very peripheral to the story. It talks a lot about a bunch of different things and not so much about the experience of their hearing loss, which was a bit frustrating because it's the selling premise of the book and why I was interested in it in the first place, and so I was quite frustrated. I should have known better because it was blurbed or promoted as a book for readers of Rachel Cusk, which I have not read, but I also DNF'd Motherhood by Sheila Heti, which is also recommended for readers of Rachel Cusk. So I think definitely that author is not for me, and books who are compared to her writing are probably not for me either. At least now I know that about myself, and I will pay a little bit more attention to that kind of information. So yeah, sadly, The Hearing Test was a fail. It was a very kind of stream of consciousness kind of book, and yeah, kind of frustrating talking about random stuff and not the thing you are interested in. So I DNF'd it and I unhauled it. It was part of my 25 books for 2025 list, so I'm still counting it as I went and crossed off that list. Then I read Us by Sarah Soler, which is also on my list of 25 books for 2025, and I could also count it for the Diversity Book Bingo from Ellen at the Element Book Club channel. So this is the story of a young couple, one of whom is trans and coming out to their partner and decided to transition. So it's the story of their couple and how they are going through that difficult period of transition, how they are coping with the comments and look of other people on them, and it's absolutely lovely, very sweet. Quite enjoyed it. I think the graphic style is quite cute as well. So it's a book in Spanish and it was fairly easy to read. Very heartwarming. I would highly recommend it if you do read Spanish. I also listened to The Lost Children Archive by Valeria Luiselli on audiobook. This was for Maria Andrea's Books and Bocadillos book club, and I'm also counting it for the Diversity Bingo, so checking a lot of boxes there. As I have probably mentioned in other videos, January was a very difficult month for me for some personal reasons. And so I was listening to this with interest, but also being slightly distracted. And so, yeah, I feel like I didn't give this book the fullest of my attention. And so I probably missed quite a few things. So that resulted in me not being able to give it a proper rating. Also, like, I don't give rating, but not really knowing how I feel about it, because again, I feel like I was not giving the book the attention it deserved. Also, I think I would have benefited from having both the audiobook and the physical format. I think you definitely want to listen to this book on audio because there is very much a sound aspect to it. So maybe rewind a little bit and talk about this story. So we are following a couple with their 2 children on a road trip. They are both sound engineers, not really, but they are, what are the words that they use in the book? Basically, they record sound, and one in a journalistic way, one in more on an archivist way. The 2 adults met on a soundscaping project, and now they are both looking at working on new projects, which are kind of conflicting and making it difficult for their family to stay together. They embark on this road trip to go work on the man's project, while the woman is thinking and focusing and being aware of the challenges of children from Mexico and other South American countries kind of migrating to the US in an illegal manner, and how they are treated, how they are put in detention centers, being deported and erased and sent back to their countries. So it's a very heavy topic in parallel to this family kind of falling apart. Again, I'm not speaking very well of this book because I'm a bit of a mess, and this book is quite complicated to grasp in a way. I think it has a lot of layers. It tries to talk about a lot of different things, so it's hard to summarize. But I really loved the narration from the point of view of the woman. It's narrated by Valeria Lucelli herself, and I think she has a very dreamy voice in a way. It was very soothing, even though the topics that she talks about are quite difficult. So I think she did an amazing job. I really enjoyed that. Then there is a section from the point of view of one of the children, which I enjoyed a little bit less. It's really worth listening to the audiobook because there is this very strong audio component to the book, but at the same time, sometimes it's a little bit hard to follow. So having the physical book to read along with the audio, I think, would be the perfect experience. That's what I would recommend for this book. I think there was a lot of poetry in the book, a lot of sensibility. Again, it touches on a lot of themes, a lot of difficult topics. You need to be paying attention, you need to be kind of immersing yourself in the book, which I was not able to do at the time. So I was not fully in it and fully convinced, but I think at another time in other conditions, I might have enjoyed the book a lot more. Again, I really appreciated the first part. Then the second part started to be a bit repetitive in places, a bit too complicated, a bit odd, and I was not in the brain space for it. So that's the only, I think that's the main reason. So if you're curious about it, I would highly recommend that you pick it up. And I'm sure that Maria Andrea is gonna make a super interesting video about it when she gets to it for the book club. So I would recommend that you check that out as well. Then I reread The Year of Less by Kate Flanders because I am doing a low-buy year this year, and I'm also gonna try to declutter some of my possessions. So this is exactly what this book is about. It's a non-fiction, it's a memoir from Kate Flanders, who I think in 2014 did a no-buy year, so a full year when she would not buy anything non-essential. I know that low-buy and no-buy years are very trendy right now. A lot of people are doing them, which is a good thing. I think it's quite exciting. But so I think she was the OG one doing a no-buy year. And at the same time, she ended up decluttering something like 90% of her possessions or something. So this is her story. This is the compilation of the lessons that she learned along the way, and I really enjoyed it the first time I read it. I still enjoyed it thoroughly this time, and so it's good inspiration at the beginning of the year when jumping into that process of consuming less, consuming more mindfully, looking critically at the things that we already own. I think it's a good inspiration source, so I would recommend it as well. Next, I picked up NeuroDiversity, The Birth of an Idea by JUDY Singer, and this was a buddy read with Mimi at the Mimi Drone channel. It's a very thin book, and the reason I picked it up is because it's supposed to be one of the, if not the seminal text around neurodiversity, so I'm very interested in this topic. I was quite keen to pick it up, but since I got this book, I found out some quite disturbing facts about this author, which made me quite regret buying the book. But yeah, basically she's been making some transphobic comments online, and I still need to look a bit more into it, but from the little I've seen, I've been quite horrified, and I just don't understand how you can be advocating for neurodivergent people while at the same time holding turf views on trans people, considering that there is an overrepresentation of queer and trans people in the neurodivergent community. For me, it just like can't go together. So I'm quite at a loss for words around this. The other thing is that basically this book is the first piece of academic text that is using the term neurodiversity, and JUDY Singer kind of built her career around being the person who kind of coined the term and had been the first to publish it in an academic setting. But apparently some recent re-emerging archives from online forums of the time when this was published, I think it's from 1998. Basically those archives are showing that she was not the first one to coin this term, and so that's also where kind of all the controversy is coming, and that's I think in that context that those transphobic comments came out, because some of the academics kind of claiming that she's not the inventor of that term are trans people, queer people, and so all those things are kind of coming together in a very disturbing way right now. Again, I need to do a little bit more reading, kind of go to the source materials and see the discussion that's been going on. But it's all very disturbing, so I would not encourage you to buy the book. I think it's, in terms of the quality of the book, it's very short. It's interesting, again, for the time. Like, I think it's already looking a bit dated in some of the terms that it's using in the way things are described. For example, around high functioning versus low functioning, but it's still a very interesting, almost historical piece of academic writing. That being said, because it's academic, it's not written for the general public. It can be a little bit dry and a little bit context heavy in a way, like you need to have some understanding already of some of the topics that I talked about. For me, I didn't feel like I learned that much because I've read Empire of Normality before this one, and so even though it talks about some things that are not talked about in Empire of Normality around how the internet basically helped the neurodivergent community to come together and emerge into a movement, there's still a lot that is covered in this that's also covered in Empire of Normality. So if you're looking for an introductory text to learn more about neurodivergence, I would definitely recommend Empire of Normality by Robert Chapman instead of this one. I think you will learn a lot more. I think it's a lot thorougher. It's not exactly the same theme, but for an introduction, I would recommend the other one, especially considering the controversy that's going on with this author. And again, that is quite disturbing. So I will also link articles and sources about this in the description in case you're interested. So that was a very unfortunate discovery. You have my thoughts about the general context and then the book itself. So interesting read, probably not the easiest, and probably at this point, like, If you're really into neurodivergence and want to read extensively about the topic, then yes, you might want to pick this up. That's the case for me. But if you're just looking for an introduction, I think there are probably better books that you can be picking up to educate yourself. In a very different vibe, I then read Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the third book in the Empyrean series. The first two are obviously Force Wing and Iron Flame. And this was a ride. So I listened to it on audiobook, as I did with all the different books before. I love Force Wing. Again, I don't think it's a perfect book, but it was so much fun. I really enjoyed it. I know that a lot of people were disappointed with Iron Flame. They felt like, I don't know, like the main character was annoying and the plot was all over the place and all of that. I think there are definitely like valid critiques about that book, but for me it was still very much fun. I still quite enjoyed it, even though I felt like it could have been two different books. That third one, however, I felt like the quality dropped quite a bit. I felt it was a hot mess. I felt there were too many characters, and so I felt very lost, oftentimes not knowing who was who and like who's this character, where are they coming from. Like I know the name, but I don't remember who they are. And then I felt that so much of the book was either very random and chaotic or didn't move the plot forward in any meaningful way, and sometimes both. Broccoli, for example, if you know, you know. I think that was just completely random, and I don't know. I have very much a gripe with this book. I thought it was very disappointing. Again, so like from where you start at the beginning to where you end up at the end, very little changed, and like you just have this twist at the end and you're wondering, oh, what's gonna happen, and blah blah blah. But so everything in between felt a bit worthless and just like fillers, so that felt quite disappointing. And so yeah, that's my review of Onyx Storm. Strong views as well. I organized a little kind of group buddy reads because I knew that some people on BookTube were reading it as well, obviously. So I'm sure they will have reviews as well. I'm not sure they're going to be out before this one is, but I will list their channels below in case you want to check out their reviews as well when they come out. The next one is Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano, which has been on my TBR for quite a while. This was a buddy read with Chelsea from Libraries and Lattes, and I had not planned to pick this up in January, but she was gonna pick it up, and so I was like, if you do, let me know. I would love to buddy read this, and I'm so glad that we read this. I'm so glad that I picked it up in January. I think this was a wonderful book. This is the story of the Padavano sisters. There are 4 sisters in this family, and this is very much an homage to Little Women, but they all have kind of different personalities, and they're like their very own person. They're not copy-paste from the Little Women book, which I appreciated. There's also William, who is a young man with a very difficult childhood, who meets one of those sisters and falls in love and marries her, and basically enter this Italian family in the US. It's kind of their relationships and how things unfold, and I thought it was brilliantly done. I thought the first chapter is about William, and I was a bit annoyed because I was reading it for the sisterhood, for the sisters' relationships. That's what drove me to this book, and so I was like, why are we starting with the guy? I was annoyed, but after that first chapter I was hooked. I thought Anne Napolitano made an amazing job making us care about this character. It talks about grief and mental health and again like family relationships, and she did that very, very well. I think you read this clearly from like an experienced writer. I really loved William's character, even though I was not expecting to care about him that much, and I was reading the book for the sisters. He's the one I ended up caring so much about, and I really appreciated the mental health representation in this book. I think it was done really well, showed kind of the complexity of it, how it impacts everything around you, and how tragic it can be. There is also a tragedy family in this book, and I experienced something similar in January. So that book resonated a lot with me in this month. I think it was a godsend to have this book because it helped me realize a lot of things about my own family, about myself. It helped me see things from a different point of view. So I really related to the book in so many ways, and very surprisingly, I was not expecting it. Obviously, this is a very personal take and very personal experience that hopefully you're not gonna experience in the same way, because it was not fun. I got so much from this book that it's gonna be a special one for a long time. So I would highly recommend. I said I was not gonna cry. And finally, the last book I read in January is a French book. It's a short writing memoir from Christelle Dabos, who is the author of the Mirror Visitor series. And she talks about how she got into writing, her process, the whole journey of writing and publishing the Mirror Visitor series, how she works on writing now, and all of that. And I thought it was really, really interesting, a brilliant book. I related to so much of it. I also dreamed about encountering a similar success with my books one day. So it was a very hopeful and comforting read. I don't think it's available in English, sadly, so I won't babble about it too much. But yes, I absolutely loved it. That was my favorite read of the month of January. So that's it. Those were all the books I read in January. Let me know in the comments which one was your favorite this month, if you read any of the books that I talked about. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.